Hi guys, I'm on time this week. Thank God. I'm feeling much better. I'm still waking up feeling a little icky, but I'm doing so much better than I was. So, I want to do an interesting one today because I've been told a bunch of times that there was a video of my mom talking to a group of people, telling people how I have brain damage and all this other stuff, and it was irritating to me, but I'd never actually seen it before. And someone recently sent it to me, and I saw red. It infuriated me. So um, that makes me assume that most of you guys have actually seen that interview. And so I want to go over it kind of point for point today, to dispute what she said there, just because I want to set the record straight. I know that I guess I was 32 years old at the time, so that was a while back, but I know what time frame by how she was talking, exactly where I was in life at the time, and I know exactly what was going on and exactly what she did and did not know. And so I just kind of, I wrote down the points so that I can go over them, because I feel like it's my right to at least stand up for my side of things. And again, I took a few days to get over the anger and some of the stuff I was feeling so that I could do this calmly. And but again, I really feel the need to set the record straight, because that interview made me sound like I've just been a fuck up my entire life, and it's not true. So I just would like to go over a few things there. Again, just for my peace of mind, and so that you guys know exactly what the score is. So the first thing she said was that she got surprised with a phone call from the hospital that she needed to come pick up my baby. Okay, that's absolutely not true. When I was in jail and going through court and all this stuff, she knew about the baby. We talked about the baby. The whole point of the matter was that the plan was for her to come pick up the baby for a couple of days until Kenny, her dad, could come and pick her up. The allegations about her dad's girlfriend being an abuser are a little bit of a gray area, just so you know. So it turned out that she was and is a terrible person, but the allegations that actually came to light at the time were because, well, I don't necessarily want to talk about people's personal stuff there, but they weren't because she was being abused. It was some family stuff that was going on at the time. Turns out down the road that, like I said, the girl is an abuser. She's a terrible person, but that wasn't the issue at the time. The next thing she said that bothered me a lot was that Amanda took Jade when I went to prison, and cut off all communication from the family for 8 years. And that's not true either. Amanda came and took Jade not because she was taking her from me or anything else, because I knew that I was messed up and I needed help, and I asked her to come and get her and help me. I did not expect to go to prison, obviously, so things turned out differently than I expected them to. But Amanda did not cut off communications. My mother knew exactly where that baby was. She never bothered to call, never bothered to try to get a hold of her. Amanda did not change her phone number. She had an open MySpace and Facebook and all those other tools that you can easily find someone with. And my mom just didn't bother, because she probably thought someone was going to ask her for support or help or money. And so she decided not to get a hold of her. And 8 years into this, Amanda actually called her to talk to her and touch bases with her and see if there was anything that she wanted to get to know Jade. Okay, so that had nothing to do. Amanda did not do anything wrong, and I want that to be 100% clear. Amanda has been 100% amazing the whole way. No matter how messed up I was, she never talked to me with disrespect. She never treated me like a lesser person. She never made me feel terrible. And I am always going to be grateful to her for that, and for taking really good care of my baby and bringing her up right. And I want that to be very, very clear. Like, she spoke about Amanda with disdain. She didn't use her name. She said her ex's sister. And it really upset me, because I promise you that in all of this, Amanda has never done anything wrong to anybody. She's always been a rock. She's always been a great support system. She's always been there. Even for me when I needed it. She's never denied a phone call. She's never not given me information about my child. She's always been there. It's important to me, because she did not deserve to be spoken about like that, and I didn't even know, and it just upsets me. The next thing she said in there that really upset me was that when I got out of prison, I went through 4 different programs because I couldn't stay sober. That is the biggest crock of shit lie I've ever heard in my entire freaking life, okay? I want that to be 100% clear. I did not go through 4 different programs. I didn't struggle with the program. I got out of prison. I stayed sober. I graduated early release drug court in exactly 1 year, which is how long the program is. Not even any weekends in jail, which a lot of people had for doing dumb things like gambling and little things like that. I didn't even do that. I got 100% completion with no issues, no reprimands, and no weekends in jail. I was completely sober and dedicated to being sober at the time. Okay, so I just want everyone to know that I didn't struggle with 4 different programs. I didn't bounce all over the universe, just being a crackhead and trying my best to survive the way she made it sound. Obviously, when I was high, I was a crackhead and I was trying my best to survive, but she makes it sound like I've been high for 30 years, and it just, it makes me so mad. I'm going to try to be calm, cool, and collected, but it infuriates me. Okay. Anyways, I try to laugh about this because, oh my God. No wonder people have the opinions they have of me. So, just so you know, she talked about, when I was with James, and yes, he was in AA with me, and I've actually gone over exactly how that played out with James, so everybody knows we were really good together until he relapsed. I split up with him. He convinced me that he was sober again, which he was for a few weeks, and as soon as he got me to move back in with him into a new house and stuff, and I was settled in and had really nowhere else to go at the time because all my money went to that, come to find out he was secretly getting high and then openly getting high, like I didn't even matter. Now, again, keeping in mind that I never, ever talked about relapse at that point with anyone. I never admitted it. I was never asked about it. I was never under suspicion for it. Now, you and I, of course, know now that, yes, I did relapse during that time for a couple of months. I broke. I was, excuse me, still a little bit sick. I was under a lot of pressure. It was in front of me every day, and I broke. I broke, and I did. But she didn't know about that. She never knew about that, and if she had known about it, she would 100% have confronted me about it, because that's the kind of person she is. She likes to be right. She likes to be the superior person, and any excuse to be able to call me out on something like that, she would jump at 150,000%. Okay? She never, ever, ever brought it up to me. She always said, you're doing good. I'm just happy you're doing better. I don't really like James, but I'll deal with it. Yada, yada, yada. She, just so you know, has never met James in real life. Never one time met him in real life. There was one time she was supposed to meet him in real life. But on my way down there, I think I told you guys about this, that he got himself arrested for driving like an ass, and I ended up driving there for Christmas by myself. So she never met him. I don't think ever once in person. And if it was once in person when she was visiting or something, it may have been for a few minutes, but I really don't even think she ever met him. So for her to say that, to tell the whole world at the time that I was just, and she made it sound like I was high for over a year in that interview. She was just doing it right and left. Lies, all of it lies. So I just want you to know that when she was proclaiming that I was high right there, she had no idea, literally none, and it was damn sure not how she described it. The next thing she says, and this one is, I think, the worst one, this one makes me, I think, the maddest because, well, I'll tell you why in a second. Well, I'm conflicted as to whether I should actually tell you. I mean, you'll know why, but there's a deeper reason why this makes me super angry. And I'm not trying to badmouth her. I'm just trying to stand up for myself. But she said she came to visit my kids, and there were bruises on Clyde's forehead, marks. And she actually went like this with a fist on her head. 100% lies. Not true. Clyde never had a mark on him. He was never hurt, never injured. James, for all his stupidity and bullshit, never laid a hand on that kid either. He was not, I mean, he hit me a few times, but he was not a child abuser. He did not hit kids. He actually was very tolerant of Clyde and Caleb, and actually loved them very much. He just continued to get high and started to lose his mind, and that's what happens sometimes. And he got worse and worse because of that. When we first got together, he was an awesome person. He was committed to sobriety, which is why I chose him in the first place. And it was a big, huge letdown when he started to get high, for sure. But again, he 100% never put marks on Clyde. There was never a question of it. There was never an allegation. There was never the slightest hint. There was not words from my mother. There was not concern from any part of the family, friends, or anything of that matter. There was nothing. So for her to openly say that and she made it encompassing, like I was involved as well, like we hurt that child, is the biggest farce I've ever heard in my entire life, and it just makes me angry. And again, there's a deeper reason why it makes me angry too. Again, I don't think I should talk about that openly right now, but something happened later on in their house, which I promise was something, not nothing. And this is absolutely nothing that she said. And it just makes me see red that she would actually say that about me, and that she would try to make the world think like that about me. But again, I did say before that that's what she threatened to do to get my first child from me. Was she threatened to accuse me of child abuse so that he would get taken from me if I didn't just leave without him. And that's how it happened. So you can watch that interview if you want, and you can see she openly accuses me and James of child abuse, and it's utter nonsense. And then she says that she stepped in after about 6 years. I think we were actually together total 7 or 8 years, but she says she's just stepped in and told James, "You have to leave. I don't want you here anymore," because she was protecting us. And then she kicked him out, and then he stayed away because she told him to. Baloney. Again, I don't think she ever even met him. She most definitely never stood up for me. She most definitely never tried to stand up for my kids. She most definitely, I'm sure talked a lot of shit, because that's what she does, is she'll sit and she'll talk all kinds of shit about people. But she 100% did not kick James out of my house, wasn't responsible for me getting back on my feet. I was on my feet. Even during the relapse, nobody questioned me. Nobody even thought for a second, or they would have at least told me they were suspicious of me. And I got on and off on my own, quickly, because I figured out I was pregnant. I don't do drugs when I'm high. I don't make high babies. No matter how terrible I've ever been. And, bottom line is that I left on my own. He got really bad. I found out that I was pregnant. I didn't want to deal with him and his baloney. I didn't want to put myself in danger, and I wanted to get somewhere where I could get sober, and I left. I got out. I had to take some steps. I think I might have even packed a lot of my stuff up when he was in jail. Again, timeline gets fuzzy because it's been a long time. It's been like 18 years. So exactly, like, all this stuff happened. Is just the order in which it happened is hard to remember exactly. But yeah, she didn't step in. She didn't save the day. She didn't tell James he had to leave and stand up for me. She's actually never in my life that I can remember stood up for me, except for one time. So sorry. Except for one time in high school. For whatever reason, she actually believed me when I told her I was not smoking on campus. Actually, I told her the truth. I told her I was smoking on campus, which I knew would get me in a lot of trouble, but I was not smoking on campus when the principal came up and knocked a cigarette out of the other girl's hand. All I did was tell her the principal was coming and then stepped on it. And the other girl even said she wasn't smoking, and they still tried to get it to hem us both up. And I got that suspension taken off my record, and that's the only time I've ever seen her stand up for me, like publicly stand up for me and believe me. And I have no idea to this day why she believed me for once, but she actually did, and she actually stood up for me that one time. And that's the only instance that I can remember. So I'm going to give her credit there because if there's more credit to give her, I would give it to her, you know? God, I still feel like my head looks like a egg-shaped bulbous nightmare. I'm still a little under the weather. Anyways, so the next thing she said was she was speaking about the job that I had at the time with disdain. She barely scrapes by. She's selling subscriptions for the newspaper. I was a sales manager for the newspaper. So I ran a sales crew, and for at least 8 or 9 years of the 11 years I worked for that company, I was making $1,200 to $1,500 a week. I didn't have a bank account at the time because my credit was still super shot and trashed from some incidents from my first marriage and from our past. So I had a coffee can stuffed full of cash, 5s, 10s, 20s, 100s. There was my savings, and a big coffee can stuffed full of cash. All my bills were paid. I was paying cash for groceries. I was not scraping by. Things started to get more difficult when I ended up on my own, and then the newspaper job started tapering off a little bit because everything was going digital, and so it was getting harder and harder to make sales. So the job gradually got to where it was a struggle. But for the big, massive, vast chunk of it, I was making really good money, and my bills were paid, and I wasn't asking her for anything. I didn't ask her for support. I didn't ask her to pay my bills. I wasn't asking her for anything. So again, she was talking about it like icky, and it was a great job, and it was fun, and I still have kids that I'm connected to from that job, tons of them, and it was a great experience, and most of them remember me, and they had a great experience too, and I don't regret any of it, and I'm not ashamed of any of it, and my kids were taken care of, the bills were paid, they were fed, everything was good. Okay, so the next thing was, again, the elephant in the room. She has tons of brain damage from it and lung damage. I don't have lung damage. I mean, COVID might have just given me a little bit, but besides that, I don't have lung damage. I don't have brain damage. I have bags under my eyes apparently, but I don't have brain damage. In fact, I'm pretty offended by that. That statement right there is the one that people have brought up to me lots in the past. Now, I have a cyst in my head. I have a benign tumor in my head. It was not caused by meth. It was something that developed naturally. I've had it, they told me probably since high school or earlier. I used to complain about problems. I used to complain about vision issues, nausea issues. They were a lot less frequent than they are now, but I would be accused of making stuff up because I didn't want to go to school. When I said I had back pain, I was accused of, well, if you didn't play sports in PE to rub your tits on the guys, and you wouldn't have back pain. But I have 2 kinds of scoliosis, it turns out. They just refused to get me checked out. They never took me to a doctor. The scoliosis that I have that causes sometimes debilitating sciatica pain now, which can't be fixed unless I want to take a big risk on ending up in a wheelchair because I'm too old to heal properly from it. That pain could have been fixed with a brace while I was developing, when I was complaining of these things happening. But nobody ever paid any mind because I'm just a slut. That's why I have back pain, because I'm a slut. So, again, yes, meth caused damage to my life. Meth did not cause brain damage. Meth caused a lot of other damage, and obviously we've spoken about that openly because that's how we heal. But I don't have brain damage. if I had brain damage and had issues, I don't think I would have been able to study for and pass these exams that I just took for these classes, because I promise you it's not an easy thing to do. Look up the material sometime if you don't believe me. It was not an easy thing to do to pass those tests for this realtor stuff. Then she was like, her dad is coming to move in with her because to detox. Okay, so for the record, my dad has, as we've discussed off and on, had drug and alcohol problems. The worst I've ever seen him drink is still less than the alcohol that I see run through other people's homes. Again, I'm not going to be specific there. Just take the context clues there. When he came to stay with me, because he felt like he was getting older and sicker. And I told him he can't be drinking every day if he wants to come see me. So he detoxed before he came. And it was just supposed to be a visit to start with. But he was kind of having issues and arguments with his wife at the time. And he showed up and he started hanging out. And it turned into a longer period of time. And then he ended up moving in with me for a while. And it was great. Till Brian came in and ruined everything, it was great. We argued sometimes because me and my dad are the same person, and we butted heads because we're both opinionated, loud MFers. But we still love each other, always adored each other, and again, I kept him under control. I did. Sometimes I policed him. No, Dad, you're not going to get beer. Sometimes I'd let him have a beer. But he didn't come to me wasted and strung out so that he could detox on my couch. That is not how that happened. Again, the way she says it with disdain and sneering, it just bothers me, because he literally, every time she'd badmouth him and I'd be like, well, she's saying all this terrible stuff about you, he'd be like, you know what, she's your mother. You shouldn't think bad about her. He would always stand up for her. Always. He didn't badmouth her behind her back like she did to him constantly. So for all that, he took the higher road. And I just want everyone to know that he never badmouthed her. In fact, he would say how he would very much like a chance to, I'm going to quote this because it's embarrassing, bend her over the dining room table again. End quote. Yeah, so there's that. I mean, the worst he ever said was, she's a bitch, but man, sometimes I think it'd be worth it. That's literally the worst I've ever seen him say about her. So yeah. And then she said, well, someone asked her a question. Someone says, well, how did she feel about when you wrote the first book about her? And she flat out says, she was in prison when I wrote it, and she was a little upset, but I don't care. She literally said she does not care how I feel. She didn't care how I feel. She tries to backpedal a little bit further on, where she says Fallout was discussed with me, and I was like, oh, it's fine, Mom, I know it's fictional, but that's not true. She never I didn't even know Fallout was coming out. We never talked about it. She didn't ask how I felt about it. She did not care how I felt about it, as she already made very clear in literally 3 sentences before she said she consulted with me, which is baloney. It's BS. We didn't talk about it. She never asked me what my feelings were. I did tell her that I was upset about it, of the first book at first, and we talked it through, and I gave it some thought on my own and decided just to leave it alone, because I could see that it was helping people and I was reaching people, and my personal feelings felt less important than the personal feelings of thousands and thousands of young people who were being helped by my story. So I sucked it up and I kept it to myself after that. But again, the way she's saying that I the system forced me to detox and all these different things. There were times where I had to stay clean because I was on paper, yes, but I made a lot of decisions on my own to get sober, to fight to be sober, for personal reasons like my children and things of that nature. And those of you who have been addicts of any kind know that sometimes you struggle with it, and sometimes you relapse if you don't have help or support system. You go back and forth, but if your heart's in the right place, you have the potential to make it out. And it doesn't require somebody else telling you have to. In fact, a lot of times that doesn't work, it requires you caring enough and wanting it enough to actually fight for it. And that's the thing that she never gave me any credit for. And that's the thing that super hurts, is that she never gave me any credit for standing up, for being strong, for fighting for my own stuff, for being self-sufficient. She's talking about me with disdain, but at the time she was talking about, I was mostly single. She reconnected with an old high school boyfriend. I had a couple of dates with him, but we weren't in a relationship. I was sober for several years on my own with children, and I was making my own way, and my bills were paid, and everything was good. I was too dumb to recognize it, but Brian is the one that came in and started changing all that. Slowly, gradually, things started falling apart then. She also said that Orion and me were connected, but he wasn't really anxious to get to know me. And then again, that's half a farce, because they filled his head with a bunch of stuff about me. They told him a bunch of things that weren't true so that he would hate me. And they coached him to stop calling me mom the second they got me out the door. So I wonder what their plans were from the gate. And me and Orion have reconnected on our own. We've had open, honest discussions about exactly what is and is not true, where exactly I was, exactly what happened, and how I feel about it. And me and him are good. We're good. And I'm still doing my best to help him, in some things that he's going through right now. But I just want everyone to know that the reason at first he wasn't interested in a connection with me is because what he was told about me, and he was told that I didn't care, and I didn't want to have a connection with him, and I wanted nothing to do with him. And that was why he was putting on a brave face and whatnot at the time. So I just think that doing something like that to a child is wrong. No matter how much you hate the person you're talking bad against, if it's a parent or someone important to that child, you shouldn't mess with their heads by bad mouthing someone that they love or that they're supposed to love. It's just not fair, and it's not right. Sorry. Okay. Whew. Okay. Obviously, a lot of this anger comes from hurt. I'm doing my best right now. So then she was like, specifically saying, well, I wanted to do this comparison so you guys could see who she was before meth and then who she turned into. But the problem with that is that she never actually made that comparison. You want to know why? Is because she never bothered to take any pictures of me in high school or that age, or even in middle school or past middle school. So she couldn't really, show anyone anything. She, again, skewed the timeline enough to make people think that I dropped out of high school or I failed high school and I went straight into prison. And that isn't true either. I graduated high school with a 3.68 cumulative average. That's all 4 years. Junior and senior year, 4.0 average. Second semester my sophomore year, I got a couple of D's. I figured out it was smarter to turn in my homework and keep my grades up so that there would be less suspicion on me. And I started doing that after that because it was just harder to get along being lazy with my homework. So I started turning my homework in. I never failed a class. I graduated with 25.5 credits, which is several more than you need in this state. I, again, got first place in the state in prepared speech and went to nationals. I graduated in good standing, and I don't think that there's really any credit for that anywhere. Then she says that Fallout is 40% true. Well, it's in the future, but it's 40% true. But there's nothing in Fallout that's true. My kids didn't grow up to all be failures. I don't have cancer. I'm not dying. It was nice of her to kill me off, though. I really appreciate that. But Fallout is 100% farce. There's no percentage of truth in Fallout whatsoever. So That one's completely made up, 100%. And again, I understand. I actually get where on one point where she's trying to illustrate what can happen if someone continues to use and continues to hurt their family and continues to put people through mess. But on the same token, she never gave me any credit for stopping that behavior and fighting it and trying to control it and doing my best to be a good person. I never got any credit at all for that. She also said that, this is kind of the last thing, last kind of point. Okay, so she said that she changed the people enough in the book so that they wouldn't recognize who they are and then come back and talk about it. Now, the people in the book that are in the book that have read it know who they are. They all know who they are exactly. When I called her out on one or two of them, she's like, no, that's wrong. It's a made-up person. But it's obvious who they are, who is supposed to be who. It's obvious to a lot of you guys. It's obvious to me. Just as per the timeline and how things add up. And some characters are made up. Some characters are a mix of a couple of different people made into one character to simplify things probably. But don't think for one second that people that have been written into that book don't know they've been written into that book, because they do. And they used to be pissed off about it or fascinated by it, and now they're kind of over it at this point. And she kind of mentioned my brother and sister a little bit, but she has never, I find it, excuse me, I find it really odd that in all of her trials and tribulations, she's never once mentioned my brother or where he's been this whole time. No, again, I love my brother, and I have a lot of respect for him because in the last probably 5 years or so, he has managed to get sober, but it has done a lot of long-term damage to him. He's just now getting to where I can hear him smile and stuff and laugh a little bit. He's been struggling with bipolar and depression and all kinds of stuff because of it, because he was almost consistently high for probably right around 30 years. Never mentioned, never brought into story, never touched on, never spoken about. And yet she continues to speak about me like I've been high this whole time, and it hurts me, it confuses me, I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't understand why, of all the kids, I'm singled out to be the one that she just dislikes no matter what I do. I don't get it. I'm probably going to stop trying to please her because I don't think it's ever going to happen. But, yeah, I wanted to address that interview because it's probably 90% lies, and the way it's said is with like kind of disdain and with this lofty kind of attitude about how great she is and how she did wonderful things and how bad I've been this whole time no matter what she did. And it's just a bunch of baloney. It's baloney. Part of the reason I struggled as long as I did is because I did not have any support. I didn't have any help. I didn't have anyone who telling me they loved me and they really needed me to come back and be a part of the family again. I didn't have that. And I had to do that part on my own. I had to find my own love, which turned out to be idiotic and wrong half the time, but it's because I was grasping at something, someone to make me feel important and validated and loved. And I just, I don't know. I don't know if it would have been different if it would have had a little bit of love and support, but it would have been nice. All right, guys, that's all I got. I love you all, and I will see you next week. All right? Hopefully that wasn't too long.